I am here for one purpose only, and that is to introduce you to our phenomenal next speaker. I want you to raise your hand if you've never heard Parisa Khosravi speak in person. Yeah, you're in for a treat, I can guarantee you. Even if, I told her earlier, if she just stood up here and told you one of the incredible stories, one of the international events that she's overseen as vice president at CNN, that would be enough for you to be inspired. But she's going to be speaking to you about her experiences, and I know that it's going to make a big difference tonight. So, Parisa is an award-winning journalist with 3 decades of experience on the world stage. We're here at a conference called Persian Tech Entrepreneurs, and there's no question that Parisa is of Iranian heritage, so that covers the Persian part. She has completely transformed an industry where technology is now ubiquitous, and that's journalism and media. And she's brought an entrepreneurial spirit to CNN, which she will tell you, was really a startup when she joined and transformed it. Throughout her career as Senior Vice President of International News Gathering, Domestic News Gathering, and Global Relations for CNN Worldwide, she has directed CNN's historic coverage of countless award-winning news stories. These include Tiananmen Square, the Iraq Wars, Fall of the Iron Curtain, Hurricane Katrina, 9/11, the Arab Spring, and the Syrian Civil War. So no easy feat, as you can imagine. She was CNN's first ever ambassador, and she was also Senior Vice President for Global Relations, building and maintaining ongoing working relations with world leaders and dignitaries where she forged long-term relationships. Her responsibilities spanned across editorial, operational, and administrative departments, including 45 CNN bureaus worldwide and more than 100 correspondents, and that's not even including the behind-the-scenes support staff. So any of you who are here to build a large enterprise with hundreds or thousands of team members, Parisa is, in addition to everything else, also an expert in that. She's now a consultant to private companies. I will be reminding you after her talk that she will be speaking here in San Francisco at the Commonwealth Club on Monday, this coming Monday at noon. So whether you're a member or not, I encourage you to go hear that talk, which will be on a different topic. And it is my pleasure now, without further ado, to introduce to you the phenomenal, the one and only CNN world leader, wonderful woman entrepreneur, Parisa Khosravi.
It can only go down from here, right? Nothing like setting up the expectation. Merci, Lilujan. Merci, Tarajan. Thank you very much. So I thought I would talk about challenges and possibilities. Life is full of challenges and opportunities. And sometimes challenges turn into opportunities, and sometimes opportunities turn into challenges. My life has been filled with both, and I consider all of it gifts, which help me grow and evolve. So today I thought I'll share some of the lessons and traits which especially were helpful to me throughout the years. One of these challenges / opportunities came my way when I was around 8 years old. We'd gone to Karaj, outskirts of Tehran, to a beautiful bog, these gardens. And all day long we played with our cousins and swam and had a great time. And at the end of the day, we were sitting on this terrace overlooking the pool and having a little asrune, a little snack before we drove back to Tehran. So my uncle, he was the joker, still is. He said to all of us, he said, I'll give 100 toman to whoever goes and jumps in the pool with their clothes on. Now remember, this was around 40 years ago, and 100 toman was like, what, around $100. So it was a great bet. And I was a spunky little kid, so I just couldn't turn down a dare. I looked at my mom just to kind of gauge her approval. And she just kind of went like this, like, it's up to you. So I was wearing this cute little mini skirt. It was very fashionable at the time, very mode. It was suede. It was different color patches of suede sewn together, and it had snap buttons in the front. So I knew if I jumped in, I would totally ruin my skirt. So I went down to the pool, and I stood there for a second, and this pool, it was like a huge pool, and very deep, and it was filled with well water. So in the evening, without the sun, you can imagine it was pretty cold, and it looked dark, and it looked cold. I just took a second, I just dived in. Everybody was surprised, my uncle most of all. So he said, and my nickname was Pargol. He said, Pargol, you have to swim to the other side. And now you have to do a full lap. And now you have to do it under 5 minutes. And I'm like, Doi, you just said jump in. So it actually was quite a good metaphor for life. You know, we might take on a challenge, but we have no idea what other obstacles will come along the way, and we have to face it. So I was already all in. I wasn't going to lose the bet now. So I didn't argue with him. I had my eye on the prize, and of course I won the bet. But it wasn't about the bet. I think about that now, and I'm so grateful to my mom, because she didn't let some trivial concern of, oh, you'll ruin your clothes, or you'll catch a cold, or آبرومون میره. It's just not proper. You know, she just said, go for it. And to be allowed to test my limits at that age was such a gift, because it allowed me to make the next decision and say, well, I did that, I can do this, and onwards. It really had a snowball effect for me. And I often think about that now, you know, how myself now, unintentionally, I prevent my own child from testing his limits because I'm being an overprotective mom. And that makes me marvel at my mom even more so, because she's not the cool khunsar type. She worries about everything. She actually asked my brother once, who's a patent attorney, if she could patent the idea of worrying so that she could take on people's worries as a business. And you know, I know it wasn't easy for her, especially with the career that I chose, which sometimes would put me in dangerous, difficult places. She would never project her fears onto me. She would always say, just call me. Call me when you take off, call me when you land, call me when you get to the hotel. I called her when I landed just a couple hours ago here in San Francisco. So it hasn't changed. It doesn't matter how old I am. I really credit both my parents for the way they raised my brothers and I. We're Zoroastrians, and they raised us with our three principles of good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, and then allowed us to make our own choices and make our own decisions. I actually decided quite early in life to follow my passion in journalism. I remember the day down to the hour when I decided to become a journalist. I was watching, as I'm sure, I don't know, some of you are too young probably. Many of you were when the American hostages were released from Iran. I had followed that story here in the States for months and watched every night Ted Koppel's show, America Held Hostage, day number, whatever it was, which turned into Nightline. And the day that they were released, I was just glued to the TV. I was mesmerized. I was so excited and so happy to finally see them released. And I remember their arrival in Germany at Rhein-Main Air Base. And they were getting off the plane and stepping down the stairs and being greeted by officials. And besides them, the only people that I could see running around behind the scenes were the journalists on the tarmac just kind of trying to talk to these former hostages. And it was so exciting to me. I wanted to be right there. I wanted to be right in the middle of the whole thing as well. So the next day I went to my English teacher. I was a sophomore in high school then, Mr. Wagner. I said, Mr. Wagner, I want to be a journalist. What do you suggest I do? And he said, oh, Parisa, journalism is just so tough, and it's so competitive, and English is your second language, and you have an accent. So he came up with all sorts of reasons why I couldn't do it. And of course I ignored him because he didn't know me. He didn't know what I could or could not do. And it's a good reminder for all of us at any age with anything. Why would we ever allow anybody to tell us what we're capable of? So I ignored him. I left the class that day, and I pretty much really did not talk to him about this ever again. A couple of years later, when I went to college, I majored in broadcast journalism. I did 7 internships while I was in school, almost every semester, and it really helped me hone in, more importantly, what I didn't like than what I did. I wanted to kind of go into international news, but each one helped me with, decipher between, do I want to go print or broadcast or radio, TV, or on air or off air. And then CNN recruited me right out of school. And I remember the lady who recruited me, she offered me an entry-level job. And she said to me, she said, why would you take a job that pays so little? Because the part-time job I had paid me more than my full-time CNN job was going to pay me. And I could have easily stayed in Chicago, where I grew up and was studying, and made much more because, it's a good market and local TV and so forth. But I would have been doing local news rather than international, which was my interest. And I didn't want the short-term monetary gain to impact my long-term vision, which sometimes we get distracted by that. And I want to kind of make a point of that for all of us. Anyway, so, that was 28 years ago. I've had an amazing opportunity. The responsibilities have been awesome and humbling. I have truly witnessed history from the front row seat. The same uncle who challenged us to jump in the pool, he once told me about my career. He said, Parisa, you either have kale khar or dil shir. Head of a mule or heart of a lion, to do what you do. And I honestly think it takes both. It takes both to do what you need to do. I've met popes and presidents and everyday people and truly been part of the ultimate startup. I think of CNN as the original social media. I rose through the ranks quite quickly. And I didn't have management training. I didn't have leadership background. Obviously, I was a kid out of school. But what I realize now, it was, and I think it's so important, I think one's EQ is just as important, if not more important, than one's IQ. The way you handle yourself, the way you treat others, the way you read a room, these are part of one's reputation and brand being built from the very start. And for me, it was all about relationships. One of my nicknames at CNN by the staff was Mother Parisa. Not just because I'm warm and fuzzy, but because I really worked hard and cared deeply for their safety. Journalists have become targets, unfortunately, in recent years. So sending people to war zones and difficult, challenging places was something that I really took very seriously and cared about deeply, and had many 3 a.m. calls and stop trips just on a gut level. I also built a little UN at CNN. I firmly believe in a very diverse workforce, not just our newsroom, our bureaus, the field. It was very important, not just because of the languages and the understandings of different cultures and backgrounds and sensitivities. even passports and visas and being able to travel, quickly around. But also diversity of personality. If I had a tough interview and an elusive interview that we couldn't get, I wouldn't assign that to my type A loud, editor. I would assign it to the very quiet, determined, patient, detail-oriented editor, who I knew would never give up. And they would try on the hour, every hour, for days if it took. And they would get the interview. So as a leader, knowing your people, knowing your troops, knowing their strengths, and playing to that strength. I don't know about you, but I've wasted a lot of time playing Angry Birds. And it sometimes helped me clear my head. If you have played Angry Birds, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You put the right bird against the right barrier, it decimates it. You put the wrong one, it's a bust. And that's absolutely the way you should build your teams. Have all types, have all strengths, and play to their strength. That's the key as a leader. The other thing I'm really passionate about is kind of kicking myself out of my comfort zone and testing my own beliefs in what I can or cannot do. A couple of years ago, I decided to do a triathlon. Now, you can look at me, I'm not a natural athlete. I have no business doing a triathlon. But I did it because I thought I could never do it. And I really wanted to push myself. And I had two goals. I didn't want to injure myself, and I wanted to finish it. And I did both, and I actually got a pretty good time as well with the race. Last year, I did something else. I wanted to kind of do something big and at the same time really give back. So I committed to walking 60 miles in 3 days for the breast cancer cure. And it's such an important cause. It is now affecting 1 out of 7 or 8 women. So many of our loved ones are affected. And I wanted to walk in their honor. And I raised personally over $16,000 for the cause. But in giving, I got so much back. Because in order to kind of train to be able to walk 20 miles 3 days in a row, you have to really train for it. So for weeks, I would get up early in the morning, I would get on the treadmill, I would put on as many miles as I could, and then in the afternoon, go outside, and if I wasn't walking with a friend or family member or taking a call from work, I would be walking quietly, not with the headset, not with music, I would just be thinking, and it really allowed me the space to clear my head. We just don't have that opportunity these days. It was so important to just kind of reflect. I reflected on my life. I reflected on what I've done so far, what else I wanted to do. It was part of the decision process for me to actually leave CNN this year because there were so many other things I wanted to do. And I encourage all of you to really look for the space to be quiet with yourself. There's so much noise in our world, and especially in your world. The gadgets, emails, social media, just life. We don't sit down and think and listen to the murmurs, which really we have the answers ourselves. And I just, in one final point, as regarding challenges turning into opportunities, when life has really tested me with the real tough ones, with the real heartbreaks, I try not to take it personally. I try not to become a victim. I don't say, why me? Because frankly, why not me? Why anybody? I say, wow, me. I look at, as hard as it is, I look at it as an opportunity to grow, to become stronger, to hopefully become a more compassionate person. It might not change the outcome, it probably doesn't, but certainly the attitude you have going through a tough time, that attitude would change the experience. And I want to wrap up, since this is a Persian tech entrepreneur gathering. I want to recite a poem in honor of our motherland. آباد باش ای ایران، آزاد باش ای ایران، از ما فرزندان خود دلشاد باش ای ایران. مرسی. Thank you.